Okay, so welcome everyone. Now it's real to this session about the CMU Portugal program. We'll start with some slides describing the program and pardon, shouldn't it be the student before? Yes, so please Sarah come. I'm sorry about it. We are still on time.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sara Filipe, and I'm an 11th grade student in Cartaz High School. I was invited by Ciência Viva to talk about my experience in the space design competition. Initially, I participated in the Portuguese phase, in which my team won. After that, I participated in the European phase, in which the previous team was divided, but the team I was in won again. Due to this, me and 3 other Portuguese teenagers were chosen to represent Europe in the international phase of this competition, the Dia16, which will be held in Kennedy Space Center, Florida, USA. This competition consists in the creation of a settlement, which is in an asteroid of a solar system. It can be any asteroid, which is done by teams organized in the same structures as companies. This project was sponsored by Ciência Viva and PT Space, and it's, in my opinion, very important because just like the CMU Portugal program, it promotes and supports educational initiatives between high schools and space design technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so let's move in with the video showing the best of CMU Portugal.
If technology had an identity, it would have ours. If technology had a place, it would be right next to us. If innovation had a trademark, it would be Carnegie Mellon Portugal. First, let's forget the ocean between us. This is a partnership that brings together the know-how of Carnegie Mellon University, a world-class institution from the US, with the experience of the best academic and industrial institutions in Portugal. Since its foundation in 2006 by Fundação para a Ciência e Tecnologia, CMU Portugal mission has been to join forces and place Portugal at the forefront of education, research and innovation in information and communication technologies. So far, the task has had nothing but success. Why? Because we are focused on exploring new research frontiers in areas such as computer science, electrical and computer engineering, public policy, human-computer interaction, software engineering, robotics, and language technologies. Our overarching mission is to foster industry-science relationships as agents of change, focusing on education and research for social and economic impact. Here's how we've been achieving it. Through dual-degree PhD diplomas between Portuguese universities and CMU, and supporting mobility programs to give Portuguese researchers and students the opportunity to visit CMU and establish the ground for new research collaborations. Research is a keystone of our partnership, and we are strongly committed to supporting groundbreaking projects in ICT, fostering interdisciplinary collaboration between industry and academia. Throughout the years, we have financially supported already over 72 collaborative projects. Recently, the most ambitious call under the program of the CMU Portugal. For the first time, 10 research projects are led by Portuguese companies, representing a strong public and private financial commitment to foster the cooperation between researchers from Portugal and CMU with national companies, promoting innovation and technology development for a global market. CMU Portugal has also been a hub for entrepreneurial initiatives, with 12 startups launched or facilitated by our activities. Together, they contributed to over $200 million of international investment, which allowed the creation of more than 1,000 qualified jobs. Most of all, we are proud of having built a strong research community that contributed effectively to an impressive number of publications, registered patents, and successful PhDs and master's theses. But the best is yet to come with new research projects and initiatives, connecting companies and academia on both sides of the Atlantic. This collaboration will keep on contributing to thrive in the innovation ecosystem. One thing is guaranteed: we will keep doing everything in our reach to bring technology into people's lives for an even brighter future.
So let's move on. I will introduce the program briefly, and next we are all here to listen to the students, former and current students of the CMU Portugal program. So CMU Portugal program is in phase 3 right now, that will end by the end of 2023. Our focus areas are in ICT, where we can range from software engineering to robotics, language technologies. Actually, we'll see that the students we have here come from different backgrounds. The phase 3 of this initiative we'll talk today about education, so the PhD programs, the dual degree that is well known, and also the affiliated PhD program. We currently have exploratory research projects and large-scale projects, and also we are very connected to startups, and we have a good number of affiliated companies. So just to briefly see what is happening with our mobility programs, one important thing is that there is currently a call that is open for visiting students. Actually, we had, as you may imagine, to stop the initiative, to cancel the initiative due to COVID-19, but now things are restarting. And we have, in terms of education, 2 different programs. One that is the dual degree program, where students spend up to 2 years at CMU and 3 years in a Portuguese university. At the end, they get 2 diplomas, one from CMU and another one from a Portuguese university. And we already have a good number of students in this dual degree program. We started last year with the affiliated programs, that is a 4-year program. The students are hosted by a PT university, do research here in Portugal, and can spend up to 12 months in CMU, and also have a co-supervisor from CMU. So let's move on. And things that are quite important is that we have the PhD candidates are connected with the projects, with the industry, and also they can do summer internships. And the goal here is that we have a strong industry collaboration. So let's move on. I will start by introducing João Magalhães, who will be sharing the session with myself. João Magalhães, that he's from FCT, Universidade Nova de Lisboa. And we will then move on to listen to João Mendonça, Maria Casemiro, Alex Gaudio, who will be joining through Zoom, and Susana Brandão and Zita Marinho. So welcome, and thank you for being here.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. It's my pleasure to introduce now John Mendonça. So John Mendonça just started his PhD in the affiliated program, which is a new program within the CMU program that aims to have PhD students that do a PhD here in Portugal. They stay some time at CMU in a collaborative effort with a company, in John's case, and Babel, in the context of the Mayu project. So, John, please.
So let's see. Okay, cool. So, hello everyone, my name is John Mendonça, and as mentioned, I am a CMU Portugal affiliate PhD student. So, my PhD is in electrical and computer engineering, but more specific, I can tell you that I am working in natural language processing. So, my host institution here in Portugal is Instituto Superior Técnico and Dia16, and when I'll be at CMU, I'll be working with researchers and faculty in the Language Technologies Institute. So I guess I can start by talking briefly about my journey onto research. So I started my master's in 2020 under the supervision of Isabel Trancoso and Rui Correia actually being a CMU Portugal dual degree alumnus. And so essentially during my master thesis, the idea was to use machine learning in speech paralinguistic tasks. And so we essentially tackled two different use cases. The first one, which was done in collaboration with Defined Crowds, now called Defined AI, which was the employer of Rui Correia. The idea there was to leverage machine learning methods in speech paralinguistics to identify fraudulent submissions in crowdsourced speech collections. And this is quite important because essentially in crowdsourcing, we want to make sure our data is as good as it can get. And so obviously having submissions by fraudulent users obviously decreases the quality of the data and is something of relevance in crowdsourced platforms. And so as a result of that, we actually got a paper accepted into this year's LREC, which we'll be presenting soon. In parallel, I actually done other research with other PhD students at Dia16, and there we actually tackled analyzing breathing signals for a compare challenge, which is conducted yearly at InterSpeech. And so this was actually done during the peak of the COVID-19 in 2020, so obviously there was quite a frenzy in terms of research to gather, at least in speech paralinguistics, ideas and research so we could help out the COVID pandemic. And so as you can see, it was a quite fruitful master thesis. And so by the end of 2020, there was an opening for a PhD studentship at Dia16 under the Maya project, which is a large-scale collaborative project from CMU Portugal. And my supervisor at the time, Isabel Trancoso, urged me to join her and her team, and I gladly accepted. And here we are. So I guess I can talk briefly about the Maya project. So as I've mentioned, the Maya project is a large-scale collaborative research project that involves several different institutions. Here in Portugal, we have Dia16, Instituto Superior Técnico, Instituto de Telecomunicações, at CMU LTI, and we also have Babel as the ICT liaison. And so essentially with Maya, we want to assist human agents by developing intelligent agents. And so obviously, this is in the case of customer support chatbots. So you can see that there are plenty of issues that we can do to assist our human agents. So first and foremost, obviously, users speak very different languages and are native in different languages, which typically don't match with the agents. Typically, they speak English. And so obviously, one of the things we can help out our agents is by adding a machine translation layer on top of our system. But obviously, there are some issues with using machine translation, namely, sometimes the message is somewhat lost in terms of meaning. And so obviously, we have many other modules that we are planning on executing to help out customer support chatbots. And so, for instance, we have suggested answers, which obviously take into account user sentiment analysis and analysis of conversational quality. And analysis of conversational quality is actually my contribution to the Maya project. However, in my PhD, obviously we want to foster research and obviously help out in terms of state of the art beyond these sorts of dialogues. So in our area, we actually define different types of dialogue systems. In the case of Maya customer support, we actually define them as being task-oriented. Obviously, they have a task in mind, which is to help out the users and fix their grievances. But there are also other types of systems, and just to give you an idea, this is an open dialogue system, and here obviously the task at hand is quite different. Instead of meeting users' demands, the idea is to have a very fluent and interesting conversation. And obviously this is a very hot topic nowadays, given that we have machine learning systems that are able to produce very interesting conversations and seem very human-like. And so research in dialogue evaluation actually started in the 1950s with the work of Alan Turing. And at the time, the idea was, he developed what we call the Turing test. And the idea was essentially to identify a system in order to see if that system was able to, that system or machine in this case chatbots, which we call them, was able to fool a human into thinking they were talking with a human as well. So as of 2022, we can say with almost utmost certainty that most dialogue systems, at least state-of-the-art systems, are able to pass this test and are able to fool a human. So one might ask, is dialogue systems fixed? Is the problem solved? And obviously not. Obviously, there are many other different aspects of dialogue that we can investigate and evaluate. So obviously in the case of the Maya project with customer support chatbots and task-oriented systems in general, perhaps the idea in terms of evaluating the dialogue system is to see if they meet the user's request. And this is essentially, we evaluate customer satisfaction. But in the case of open dialogue systems, which one I presented earlier, perhaps we're more interested in evaluating, for instance, if what the chatbot is saying is actually correct. And this is actually a very troubling issue with current dialogue systems, is that they seem very human-like, which is the goal of the Turing test. But when we see exactly what they are trying to say, it's sometimes the case that they are speaking they are saying things that aren't correct. So if you go to Wikipedia and double check, it's incorrect. And so there's obviously a very interesting research direction trying to understand why machines say this, and obviously finding ways to evaluate these systems in this way. But obviously, besides factual groundedness, there are many other dialogue aspects or subqualities, which we like to call it, that we can use to evaluate dialogue systems. Another example I like to give is the system being empathetic or not, which is both useful in open dialogue and obviously in task-oriented dialogue systems. And so this is essentially what our research attempts to do at the moment. So our idea is to combine as many dialogue subqualities or aspects as possible, obviously the ones that make sense for the dialogue system and the evaluation, and we want to do this as efficiently as possible. Obviously, there are recent prior work that attempts to do this, but typically they only use a subset of these dialogue subqualities, and they actually train a model for each individual subquality, which is both time-consuming and computationally expensive. So our contribution, and we actually do have current work and the submission for a conference, is to do this only using a single transformer model, which is much more efficient. But obviously, there are many other routes of research that we can tackle. For instance, one of the issues with dialogue systems is that they're typically monolingual. So most of the time, they are in English or more recently in Mandarin. And that poses a problem, obviously, for metrics that attempt to evaluate dialogue systems. We want to make sure that they are language invariant, or that is multilingual. And so this is where nBabel joins us. So essentially, nBabel, and we're working with nBabel in order to develop data sets that are both multilingual and domain independent, multi-domain. And so by domain, I mean, for instance, you can think of a single domain ticketing systems for airlines, another domain online marketplaces. And so besides multilinguality, domain is actually another layer of complexity that we need to tackle. Obviously, if we train and evaluate metrics on a single domain, obviously it's the case that frequently it happens that most of the time these metrics do not work that well for other sorts of domains. So obviously we're working very hard with nBabel in order to bring to the community data sets that are multilingual and multi-domain. And so this is exactly what we're planning to do at my stay at CMU. So being an affiliate student, I can spend up to a year at CMU. There I plan to do research with my co-supervisor in the United States, Alan Levy, and obviously other like-minded PhD students and faculty at the LTI, which have dialogue systems and dialogue system evaluation research in mind. And so for that, I'd like to obviously thank FCT and CMU Portugal program for providing me the opportunity of staying in the US for up to a year, and obviously being a liaison between CMU and my host institution here in Portugal. So that's all in terms of my brief talk. If you have any questions, I'm not sure if we can discuss questions at the end, but if you have any issues or questions you might want, especially those online, you can send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, John. We'll have all the questions at the end to shorten things a little bit. So now I will give the word to Maria Casimir. So Maria Casimir is currently a PhD student in the dual degree for software engineering, and she is in Portugal with Técnico and Inês Caidi. Thank you.
So hi everyone, both in person and online. Yes, as Inês said, I'm a dual degree PhD student. I'm more or less halfway in the program, and I've already had the chance of spending 1 year at CMU. Then there was COVID, I came back, and next year I'll be going back for my second year at CMU. I got my master's degree from Técnico in 2018, and then I joined the program a year later in 2019. And at the time, I did not really know what I wanted to do in the future. And so the reason why I decided to apply for the CMU Portugal dual degree PhD was because I thought it was an amazing opportunity to explore more of the huge area that is computer science, which would allow me to understand what it is that I really like and wanted to do in the future. And it would also give me the opportunity to go to the US, spend time at a top university, and just allow me to learn from other cultures and from other schools. And so that's why I joined. And right now I've been working at the intersection of self-adaptive systems and machine learning. Basically, self-adaptive systems are systems that can change themselves during their operation, during runtime, in order to do better what they were built to do. And these systems, they now sometimes rely on machine learning techniques to make better decisions. And the problem I'm trying to address is how to ensure that the machine learning system, in these systems is performing as well as it should. And when it's not, then if we should do something to try and improve it. That's the general idea. And also, I've been applying these ideas to the specific context of fraud detection, which arose also last year due to the CMU Portugal project called Camelot, in which both my advisors are involved. And due to this project, which is a collaboration between multiple institutions here at Portugal and FIDSI, it gave me the opportunity to do a summer internship at FIDSI last year. And so their use case of fraud detection has been the use case for my research so far. And it was a great opportunity last year to be able to do this internship, despite being remote. So I did not get the opportunity to actually interact to the people at FIDSI. I really learned a lot. It's very different doing research at a company or in academia, and it was really valuable to see how they organize themselves and plan for the future in order to ensure that their research succeeds. And so besides using their use case as my use case, I've also been trying to apply what I learned during my internship to improve my research methods. So yes, it was the whole CMU Portugal journey has been extremely fruitful, and I'm really happy to be part of the program and to have been given this opportunity.
Okay.
And I think I'll wrap it up here.
Thank you so much.
So we have now Alex Gaudio. He's connected remotely. I don't know if...
Oh.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So Alex is in the 5th year of the PhD, so I'm sure he has different things to tell us because it's a different phase of John and Maria. So Alex, please go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. There's a bit of a feedback, but if it doesn't bother you, I'm okay with it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak with you all today and to present. I want to apologize to you that I'm not there in person. There's a strike on the trains, and so I couldn't make it. In any case, thank you very much for the opportunity to present. I'd like to focus some of the things I talk about on path and choices, and why did I make certain choices. And so following the suggestions from Mariana for the outline of this presentation, I'll kind of cover 3 topics: my previous experience and how I got to where I am now, a little bit about my research, although probably that'll bore everyone, so I love it, and where I'm going with it, and then my future plans. So regarding my previous experiences, I was a Bachelor of Arts in music in Bard College in the United States. And I never had any intention of actually going into software engineering or any of these things. That is not until my last year of undergrad when I realized that I wasn't going to make it as a jazz musician and I needed to look for something. And so what I did was I searched the industry that was most in demand. Software engineering was the top of the list, and I had a Linux computer as a musician, so it made perfect sense to me. And so this transition was one of me graduating, learning how to program, and then convincing someone that I knew just enough that they would hire me. And I would say that even though, this is about many years ago in my experience, I think these stories have a lot of relationship to PhD students and master's students graduating today, because I was in the place to hire many people, including somebody from CMU. And I think that the process of, choosing a place was about choosing the right kind of boss and then finding somebody who would just kind of give me a little bit more. And I kind of rode this wave and very quickly learned that the things that I liked were in data science, which at the time was a budding field. Nobody was a data scientist yet. And so I jumped a couple jobs in the startup world in New York City, and eventually convinced somebody with great pains to hire me as a data scientist, where I then stayed for 3 years. And in a startup, if you're somewhere for 3 years, you run the place. So it was a great experience. And it was that time that I actually hired one of the people who wrote my recommendation letter, Dia16, who was fresh out of CMU in the PhD program. And now he's a president of 2 Sigma, so he's doing great. But my frustration kind of with riding the wave over a few years and kind of trying to always get to the top was you always are reaching for this goal that you can never hit. And you keep going and you go and you go, and you're like, I'm at the top. And then you get to the top of your company or wherever you are and you say, it's a small company, so it's not that hard. But you get to the top and then what? And then you look around and you're not happy. And so this was a huge frustration that I had. And some of the things that were driving my internal angst were to see, we released this huge product. It made tons of money. It was very successful. But I looked at my sister's profile, and we were a marketing company. We had clients who were using our tools that we made to target people like my sister, who didn't make very much money at the time. And she was writing at exactly the same time the campaign started about buying, $800 purses and $300 shoes. Both of those companies were our clients, and they just started using our tool. So that really bothered me. And I decided that I had to do something else, but I didn't know what it was. And I made this very risky, dumb, some people told me, and frightening life decision to just leave. And so I left and I went for this other startup. My boss, I told my boss, who I had actually hired, he was like my professional dad. I told him, you know, I didn't want to do this anymore. Get me a new job. And he set me up with this startup. It lasted 6 months and it didn't go very well. And then after that, I didn't work. And I said, I won't work for 6 months. And I actually didn't work for 6 months to the day, I think. And in that time, I did a lot of thinking. I got banned from LinkedIn for looking at trying to figure out what people's life paths were. I interviewed at Google and I got rejected. The glass ceiling for music major is kind of harder than for everyone else. But I didn't actually want it. And then at one point I wrote my former boss, who was then working at Instacart and doing really well there. And I said, hey, can I meet with you? So I got an interview at Uber just so they could fly me so I could go meet with him. And of course, I never accepted the Uber job. I don't like that. I didn't like that experience very much. But I was talking with my boss and he said, Alex, you know, the doors were closing actually as I was talking to him about all these things that I, you know, was interested in. The doors were closing in the elevator as we were about to say goodbye. And he poked his head into the elevator doors and said, Alex, go get a PhD. And at that moment, I was waiting for him to say that without knowing it. And I just kind of fell back into the elevator and the doors closed. And that was kind of a turning point in my life for actually many things. It was a turning point where I kind of realized that at some point you stop riding the wave and you do things for yourself. And so kind of right then and there, I kind of set this finger in mind, this direction in mind that I would go apply for a PhD, but you know, the path goes like this. And so I ended up doing research at Columbia with a professor, Aud2, who's a wonderful person. And at the same time, I started a nonprofit with somebody else from Columbia to create maker spaces, which are like 3D printing tools. A room of 3D printing tools and things like that is free to the public and you know, teaching kids and people how to do things. And after a little while, I fell in love with this, but I really also wanted to do the research. And so I applied to CMU, and when I got in, I said, God damn it, now I'm in. Now I have a choice to make. And of course I chose CMU because I felt that the nonprofit would keep going without me, and it did until COVID squashed it. And that the CMU opportunity was a one-time thing. So I took that, and I was very happy with the choice. I am still very happy with the choice, and I think it's a great thing that I have done for myself and also for my family. Let's see. So when I got into CMU, I was kind of on the fence because my nonprofit was taking off. And my current advisor said, well, you know, there's this program in Portugal where you can do both. You can be in both institutions and you can go live there. And so pretty much the moment he said that, I was sold. Because that just seemed like a really good opportunity. And it's a great opportunity, and I have really benefited by it. I've also been pained by it because of COVID, but it's not the program's fault at all, I don't think. And so now I've moved here with my 2 children and my wife, and we've lived in Portugal, and we're going to live here for about another year, a little more. And yeah, so that's been my path up to now, I think. And the research that I've been working on is explainable machine learning. So the first direction that I went in was diabetic retinopathy detection, and that was at CMU. And that was a fantastic area. I really, really loved it. And the pictures of a fundus image are beautiful. A retinal fundus image is the back of the eye. But at some point after the first year and a half, my advisor said, oh no, now we're going to switch to a new project. So we switched to the TAMI project, which is another great project about explainable machine learning for chest x-rays before COVID happened, and as well glaucoma and cervical cancer. And so now I'm working in those areas. And then I have a third area that's just starting to come out that is really truly my own thing, which is in cardiology data. And there's a professor who's a very new professor at FEOP in Inas Tech in Porto, named Francesco Rena. And he was working on these just really interesting things with hard sounds. And so I wrote to him and I said, you know, I'd love to work with you. I love this. And so we started working together. We have our first paper submission under review. It will almost certainly get accepted. And then we're working on towards a second. And one of the things that is really drawing me to this actually is the fact that the cardiology data, this cardiology data set project, is my dad is a cardiologist. And one of, I think, like life advice that I could give if I was to give something like this would be to look at your unique position and where you are in life and then take for granted, like the fact that my dad is a cardiologist, and exploit the living daylights out of it. Use the sense you get to optimize the things that you take for granted. And so in doing this, I've started now this project with the Yale New Haven Medical Center in the United States, which is one of the biggest cardiology departments in the country, in the United States, to collect data sets for heart sound analysis and analysis of heart diseases. So we have 2, maybe 3 data sets that we're about to start. And so looking towards the future, and after I graduate, that's a direction that I'm hoping will open up a lot of doors for me. I would love to work with my dad. It's a really fun thing to do. But also I think just to be situated in a hospital with a real application, you know, the things you're working on, and very close to the people who actually need these tools is such a cool idea. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. And if people have questions later, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. So we will now move on. So we had one student, John, from the affiliated program. We had Maria and Alex with the dual degree program, who are currently students. And now we have 2 former students. We'll start with Susana Brandão, who finished the dual degree PhD in 2015. She was supervised by Manuela Veloso, and after the PhD, she became a data scientist, first at NOS and now at FIDSI. Thank you, Susana.
So, hi. I think my story kind of overlaps with some of the stories I've heard here. So I started the program in 2009, and that was like 4 years after I finished my undergrad. So I studied physics, and I always wanted to do a PhD. Most of my friends were doing PhDs, my family also. I had lots of people in my at home with PhDs or that they were studying. Like that, not many, but at least half of my family has PhDs. So that was expected from me to have a PhD, basically. And after studying astrophysics, I started 1 year still doing research to see if that's what I really wanted to do. So I was not really ready to commit after my undergrad. And so after 1 year, I decided that probably that was not the best choice for me, because I was not really seeing what would I do with a PhD in astrophysics, like what would happen afterwards. And so I decided to go and find a job, which seems like a little bit more interesting, at least from the financial point of view, and to be independent and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, let's go and find a job. And luckily, and surprisingly for me at the time, it's kind of easy to get jobs when you come from physics. So I was working in space engineering, and then I was also working in strategy consulting at the Boston Consulting Group. And it was kind of nice, like I was well paid. I think it took me a while to get that much money as I was getting there. And so, but after a while, I was really, really bored. So after doing this, the jobs, what the feeling that I got was like the jobs that you get with an undergrad are not really that fulfilling. And so I went back to my initial dream, which was to do a PhD, but I wanted to do a PhD that will give me something when I finished, that I could actually use it and that I could create value with it, that I could be create something in the society that I could give back. Not that I think that physics does not contribute to society, don't get me wrong, I really like physics and I think it's important to understand what is around us, but it's not the same thing, really. When you think about it and what makes you feel happy with yourself, it's not the same thing. So I had the opportunity to meet someone that had finished his PhD with my advisor here at IST, with João Paulo Costeira, so he was working at BCG, and he suggested me, go and talk with him. He's very good, he's very nice, just go and meet him. And I went, and he proposed me, he was at the time very involved in the CMU Portugal program, and he presented me the program. And for me, the program was really interesting because it had the opportunity to go abroad. And for me, that was also important because again, most of my friends were doing PhDs abroad. My sister was also in Netherlands. I didn't want to be the one that stayed at home. But I also knew that was going to be very difficult. If I went abroad, it would be very difficult to return because I also had some friends that had finished their PhDs. And it's difficult to get a job back in Portugal, either in research or in a company. So it was very important for me this opportunity to be abroad and to have a degree from Carnegie Mellon, but I would still be in Portugal when I finished my degree. So I would still create a network in Portugal that then will help me to go back to the industry, or even if I wanted to do research, I would have a network here. I would build a network here. And this is very important. I think probably people underestimate the power of networking. But I think this is really valuable. The CMU Portugal program, this is what it offered me, the opportunity to have the experience of going abroad and also building a network abroad. But in the end, because I wanted to stay in Portugal, I also had the opportunity to have it here. So after I finished my PhD, I was working in computer vision and robotics. And after finishing, I actually didn't want to continue working on that field because okay, so done, finished. I think the most important thing about the PhD is to finish. So finish your PhD and then you are able to tackle whatever problem. This is how I felt when I finished. Now I can solve anything. I finished, everything seems easy compared to finishing a PhD. So I finished my PhD and I went to work actually not at Nós, I went to work at Cisco where I was working. I think I had some classes with you there. And so because I wanted to learn more about optimization and Cisco has this really nice innovation center where they actually work and they have really cool solvers and they work with nonlinear optimization. So it's really fun and I was there learning and it was really fun. But then again, the market, it's something that does not really call for solvers, optimization solvers yet. I think probably in a couple of years it will go back to optimization, but currently it's not. And I had a PhD where I had learned lots of machine learning, and I worked all these positions for data science, and so I just went to data science. I was working at Nós, and Nós is a really nice company for generalistic data science. So you get a project where you can build from beginning to the end. You can think about the definition of the problem, you can work with the business side, and you can actually see the value. This is what I really wanted, to see the value of what you are building. You can, I was working in quality of service, so I had to identify clients that had problems in their internet or television service. Please don't tell me if you had, I don't care. Right now, I no longer work there, so but it was really interesting because like I got to think not just how to detect these clients, but also how could we solve the client's problem. And the fact that I had to do this trade-off of like, what is the best things that I should be identifying with my problem? Like, how can I really create, what type of use cases actually create value? And so this is something that it's really interesting because you get to use the knowledge that you gain from the PhD point of view. And I also got to use what I had from like Boston Consulting Group, like a business mindset. And I got to put things like from the beginning to the end. It was really, really interesting. And like lots of doors open when you have a PhD from Carnegie Mellon. So yeah, so eventually I also like I'm now currently like as an expert data science at VidSite. So it's very recent, so I cannot even like talk much about it. Like I can talk more about what I did at Noj. And so I've just started like less than a month ago. So, but this is one of the things that you also get. Like you are recognized as a knowledge person in the field in different companies. I'm also currently invited professor and in some like at Nova Business School and also at Católica. So, yeah. So it's again things that having a PhD, a dual PhD from Carnegie Mellon gives you. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So now to close the last former student in this case, so Zita. So Zita did a PhD in computer science and robotics, also in machine learning and optimization. So there are similarities here. So please, Zita, would you like sharing your story with us?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, first of all. My journey was also very peculiar, as everyone else's. So I started from physics as an undergrad, and after finishing the master's, I went and worked at ESA for almost 2 years at the Operations Center, and I started working as a project with some robots with Lego. And I really fell in love with it. And so I decided I wanted to do more machine learning and more robotics courses. So I enrolled in a few PhD programs. One of them was just a tick box on a CMU Portugal program. And as I got in, I was super happy. And CMU is a great place for computer science. So if any of you is interested, I would definitely recommend. It's one of the top universities. And it allows you to learn a lot of things, and one of the best things is the people you meet there. You will meet great people there. So one of the best advices I got as I was a student was talk to everyone around you. Ask, and just because everyone around you is super interesting and they're doing great things, and in the future you might be able to collaborate with them or even just be friends with them. So that was one of the greatest advices I got. The other one was when I was starting the PhD, I went to one of the like open houses, and when you get to know the program and things like this, when they introduce you to the university, they first tell you that your PhD is like a marathon. So don't tire yourself out in the first minutes. This is a really long process. It will be hard. You'll get ups and downs, but the main thing is like it's to finish, like Susanna said. It will be a marathon. It will be hard, but if you manage to finish, you gain a lot of things. You gain the knowledge and the tools you learned along the way, but also this resilience process that make you resilient to a lot of things you'll be able to do in the future, and those are like personal skills you get to learn that will be applicable anywhere else. You might even use the tools you learned during your PhD, and you'll be a great expert on that. But if you don't, that's okay as well. And the other tools you learn will be also useful for anything you'll be doing in the future. So I think that the journey in itself is interesting and important, and will help you grow as a person, and also as an expert, obviously, but also as a person. So I would recommend it. I was also working in jobs, and I was After finishing the PhD, I was not happy and I wanted to keep doing research. When I finished the PhD, I was done with research and wanted to do jobs. Then I went for a job, a normal job, and was like, no, I want to go back to research. And I think I'm good now. And so it's okay to fail and it's okay to make the wrong decisions. You can always correct them. And yeah, but if you want to think about whether you go to academia or whether you go to industry, I think I've taught a course, and as I started my PhD, I thought I wanted to be a lecturer and work in academia, but it turns out in the end I really like working in research in industry. You also get to collaborate with a lot of good researchers, you get a lot of interesting discussions, you get to do good research, so I think my advice is try it out and see what it feels for you, what kind of things you like. And I think the PhD is what you make of it as well. So a little bit, I know there's a lot of pressure from the project you're in and from the advisors you get, but you can always spin it a little bit under your preferences and what you want to pursue in the end. And always keep that in mind so you don't get deviated too much. That's my advice. Yeah, that's it. I don't know if you have any questions or further thoughts.
Zita, thank you. Thank you very much. So we still have some time for questions. Maybe we can give a preference to remote people, because people that are here can follow up if needed. I don't know if there are any questions from people online. In the chat? No? Then we can take questions from the audience. Please. Is there a microphone?
It's coming.
Hi. What would you say to someone making a transition like some of those that we heard of here? Maybe the more drastic one was Alex's from music to startup world and PhD, but also Susanna. How do you start? You know, when you're going into some other area in which you don't know who the names are, how to get there? How did you do that?
As I said, I first talked with someone that pointed me to someone, and only then I knew about the program. But I also started to look into other universities, and that's really a problem. Like, usually you should really start before. If you want to go to other programs, start to do your homework before. Like, try to engage. Because I was just basically submitting things. Like, people did not know me, so it was more difficult. And here it was easier because I already had a contact with someone and I knew the people, so it was easier. And so I think if you just look into, like, try to meet the people beforehand and send them emails, try to go and visit, I think it's going to be easier. For me, it was not that much of a question because, like, in the end, this is what I wanted, but I was searching for other things. So, like, if I had the fallback plan, usually it's good to have fallback plans. But yeah, try and contact first, and it's difficult.
I don't know if Alex can also answer this.
Yes, you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, I would second a lot of what Susanna said. Which is that if you can find people and meet them and basically shake hands with them and make friends with them, I feel that people have always wanted to help me when I had an idea and I could point a direction and point a finger in some kind of crazy direction, and it was, as long as the direction was something that the person who was listening to me understood and internalized and appreciated, I generally found people want to help. And I think that said, though, one of the things that's very hard to do is to actually find these people, find people and meet them is much harder said than done. And sometimes I think that, at least in my approach to how I've solved this very difficult problem, I'm not the best at it, obviously, but my approach sometimes has been to rethink my goal of what I'm trying to do. Sometimes the problem, the way you think about the problems that you have and the way you want to solve them is too narrow. And some doors, you can open them and go down the path, and it's just hard the whole way. It hurts, it's so hard. And other doors, you open them and they just look bland. I worked for I think this is recorded, so maybe I won't say all the details, but I worked for a company once that looked not that exciting on paper, but actually it ended up, and I went for it because I knew somebody who worked there, and actually it ended up being one of my most rewarding experiences. It was an amazing thing. And so I think that the suggestion would be try to find and meet people. And if that's not working, just try to rethink the way you're solving your problem. Shoot for something boring and go gung-ho in it. And I guarantee you it won't be boring. It just won't.
Yeah. So I just would like to make an observation. So you have one of the directors of the program here. And Ines can somehow route you to the right person that may match your interests. So, any more questions?
Yes, Pedro.
Okay. So there's different backgrounds here, but I noticed most of them are what you would describe as hard sciences, so physics, computer science, although there is the case of music, but he did take a qualification in computer science, if I understood correctly.
Yeah.
But do you take people, for example, from environmental or ecological sciences, even if they don't have a computer science or, let's say, a supposedly hard science background?
I am not sure I understood the question. You are asking if they should apply for the PhD?
I think that, well, what Susanna described is quite nice, and also what Alex described. So at some point when you make your application, people have to believe that you have all the capabilities and the guts to get to the PhD, and that you will be able to make it despite what is your background. So sometimes, even if you are not from computer science, you can have a different perspective, and that is good. But for example, as I understand from Susanna and Zita, they get some experience, or they could make the case that they had all the background that was needed to be successful in the PhD. So that's what you need. And if you think, well, maybe I will do some work before applying, you should build your CV so that it is strong enough. Because it's not a problem if you have a different background. It can even be an advantage because you have a different perspective, and these days computer science is quite interdisciplinary. So I would not see that as a problem, but sometimes you need to add some pieces to your CV to make it more credible.
I can give an example of a colleague but it was a master she was in. So she was from arts, so she did from Belas Artes in Portugal. And what she did is she took some courses, for example, from university, online courses from universities, where she did the full work. She had the degree for specific course, like learning Python and those things. And she had a degree that said that she took those courses, and with that she could apply to CMU Portugal as a master's student. And she did great now. I think she's working at Disney. I think the last time.
Hi, can you hear me? I was looking at this as you were talking because I'm a biologist, and like, had I been a better mathematician, I would have studied physics. So I can think of nothing, better to do with my time than study like the nature of black holes. But like an actual practical question about this whole matter of doing a PhD and what you gain from doing a PhD, right? I have an issue with the narrative of the resilience issue and how tough that makes you and how good it makes you for the work environment, because I know many people who fell through the cracks, and at any given time, I think all of my colleagues and I were doing like psychotherapy. So my actual question is, what advice would you have, or any of you, in terms of resilience, of how to get through a PhD and how to make the best of it? Because it is an amazing chance and it is like a great time of your life, but sometimes it can be tough.
I think also Zita can also share a bit of her experience. I know she also talked a lot about it. I just wanted the only part I want to say is like, you should have friends. I think that's the most important part. It's your friends. It's your colleagues in the lab. And not to get too frustrated with people that are next to you and they have all the papers and they're like okay, so don't look at just focus on getting on your work and continue your and believe in your work, and don't get too frustrated if you don't get at the same part as at the same stage. Probably some will be above you, with more papers, some will have, and this is usually what causes anxiety. And so the main thing is just focus on your work and have good friends. This is, and I can also give you.
Yeah, I agree. Having a good group of friends will definitely help. Also meet other PhD students, because you'll not be alone on this. Everyone else feels the same. I think the problem is you comparing yourself with the other people in the lab or another few students that are great. And I think you just need to learn to deal with it. Yeah, that's it. And move on. But it's okay if you don't publish 37 papers in your PhD. If you just publish 3, that's still okay. It's still good work. And maybe it took you longer and more time on each paper. The quality might be higher, or it's just a different field that's harder to publish, or you don't have to compare yourself, basically. That's it. But for you to realize that, I recognize it's hard. Even for me, it was hard. But I think this whole process is the qualities, that you should learn. You learn this resilience, you learn that you make it your own path. So you need to realize what your strengths are and how you pursue them, basically.
I think, may I add that I think a very good advice that Zita also gave was talk to people, talk to colleagues, to other PhD students. That is really, really critical. I think the other important thing, and probably in my opinion is the most important one, pick a problem that you will never stop thinking about it. It's a problem that you need to be sure that you will never, never get tired of it. It's something that it will stay with you for five years or more. And so you need to have this always very close to your heart. And if at some point you get delusioned or you don't like any longer the problem, that will be really, really difficult. So you need to pick really, really well the problem, and that is why it's important to talk to the first question. Talk to people to know what problems are out there. So it also needs to be a problem that it's not too easy and not too difficult. Because if it's too crowded, then well, it will be very competitive. So.
Yeah, so I'm halfway, and so far, I think last year, I've been struggling with what you described with resiliency a lot, because also, especially with COVID and everything being online, I think it made everything much harder, and also especially everyone tells you not to compare yourself with others, but it's really difficult to find other metrics to evaluate your progress, so you always tend to look at what others have achieved and what you have achieved. And yeah, what I've been learning this past year is that if I show up every day and if I do the best I can and if I'm always there every day trying to work on my problem and finding the solution, then I should just be happy with my progress, because I cannot do anything else. I mean, I have to sleep, I have to eat, and if I show up there every day and if I'm trying, then, well, that's what I have to do, and eventually the good results will show up. So I think that's what people should try to focus on and assimilate, I guess. It's not something you learn, it's just something you kind of get used to. Yeah. Progress is slow, but yeah, I expect it will arrive.
Yeah, it's a marathon, as Ita was saying, right?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello?
Yes,
Oh, yes,
Alex?
I'm still okay. I would also say that this question of resilience is not one that is unique to the PhD. In my experience, before doing a PhD, I worked for 7 years. And I feel like I did most of my resilience training in the startup land, where every day you don't know if you're going to get fired the next day. And that's a very hard place to be, especially when you start to have children, you know, these things. And having gone through that, and now being a little older, from my perspective, like many of the challenges of the PhD are a breeze. But there are also many of them that are very difficult. They're just not the things that for me have been difficult have been more related to living in a foreign country, things that I've never experienced. But what I'm trying to say is this question of resilience happens everywhere. You will encounter it no matter where you go. And I think what everybody, if I can try to summarize what everybody is saying, is that use people to help you, and it's about your path. And just focus. You can't love others until you love yourself. Kind of this idea is one that I've adopted, and I think it works very well. You just have to kind of learn how to love all of the things inside of you and then grow them so that you can share it with everyone else and teach other people to do the same. And I think once you get going on this, sometimes it spirals in this wonderful direction. Sometimes.
I think just to add the same thing, I think it's also it's important to do good research, but what is the most important thing is that you learn how to do good research, because you're a PhD student. You're not a researcher yet, so you're being trained to become a scientist. It's a student. It's not. You're not a full-time researcher yet. You're still studying and learning how to become a top researcher or a good researcher. Okay, so that's important. Of course, that publications is an easy metric, of course, but you can see quality in your final thesis, in the papers that you write. So it's not just the number of papers, it's the quality that you, how you, in your speech, where you put the importance. There you see the scientist, okay? That, I think this is also important for you, and not, well, it's also important, but it's not the key thing, okay? So, more questions? We still have time, so we, oh, not really.
Not much time. Maybe I will just make one comment, and if someone wants to add something, and when we will be done afterwards. One of the things that is quite clear here from all of you is that you think about your career and about your future when you are a student, but also afterwards, and you see industry as something that is the right place to be. And I think that, well, the traditional PhD has some strong connections with academia, when a PhD is much more than continuing the career in the academia. But it's something that you got from your experience in CMU, is something that you see for those who have already finished a PhD. You see that it was, so people recognize your PhD as something that is valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So even as a requirement in some positions, you need to get a PhD to be, for example, a research scientist in some companies, right? Otherwise, you'll have to follow the path of a research engineer or some other path, right? Or if you want to grow in your position as a research scientist in a company, if you want to be in a management position or leading a research group, it's usually a requirement to have a PhD. Might not even be in the field. I know a few companies that is not tightly connected to the field, but they do require a PhD. So it's not a, so when people tell you, oh, but you are going to work in industry, why are you taking a PhD? In my program, for example, there was a girl that she entered the PhD because she wanted to grow as an engineer in the industry. Because she felt that if you don't have a PhD, you have a certain gap that you cannot pass, and you need a PhD. So it's no longer just going to academia. I feel that also if you want to grow inside a company, or yeah, you also benefit from having a PhD.
I think there's also a bias, a sampling bias here, because I think most of us are like related with machine learning, which is clearly something that it's useful to have a PhD to work with. Like it's like in the industry, it's really. So I think there's a sample bias here. That's why you can draw that conclusion. But also, for example, when I was at NOS, we had PhDs from different fields. For example, even from mechanics, or like it's still again like hard science, as they were saying before, but still, for example, civil engineering, and I think having and from biology, like even like pure biology, and I think even when you have these PhDs that are not directly related with computer science or machine learning, in fields such as data science, it gives you an edge on how you look at the problem, and how you break the problem into different parts, and how you can solve like all the things that you had to learn to do during your PhD to tackle a problem. They are very useful in data science projects, and especially when you are in projects such as I said, where you have to do everything from the beginning to the end. You have to talk with stakeholders, define the problem that you need to solve, and like propose solutions. So all these things that you have to do, and although they are not like research, as Zita was saying, but they still have the problem-solving skills that you learn through a PhD, even if it was not in computer science, even if it was in biology, they are very useful. And you can clearly see a difference on the way that people tackle the problems, those that have a PhD and those that come just, and also from the proactive point of view, like the way that they can also handle, for example, like juniors, and like, so it's, I think that's like, yeah, most of my colleagues at NOS, they had PhDs, even if it was from different fields.
Great. Anything about your experience with the industry, or it's yet to come after the PhD?
Yes, I think it's a bit yet to come. Although I had the experience of the internship.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, I was at the research department, so a lot of people there also had PhDs. So it's, I'm also a bit biased, I guess, because yeah, I think typically if you want to, well, maybe not, but yeah, I think typically if you want to work for a research department at a company, they usually prefer that you have a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone there had one, I think. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't yet have a full opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think
We can close now.
we can close
Thank you
the
very
session.
much. Thank you, Alex, and thank you for those being here. And see you next year, I hope.
Thank you.